This episode is sponsored by the Body Image Upgrade, a 30-day course helping you rebuild your relationship with your body. Tools, resources, and daily exercises to upgrade your body image. Learn more at bodyimageupgrade.com and enter the code podcast for 50% off. Welcome to Breaking Body Biases, a podcast about creating health and happiness without worrying about your weight. I'm Christine D. Philippus, certified fitness professional, studio owner, and creator of FitProEd, an online education platform for group fitness instructors. Join me every week as I interview fellow fitness pros, dietitians, wellness practitioners, and a wealth of others who are sharing their journey and helping to destroy diet culture. Welcome to episode 30 of the Breaking Body Biases podcast. This is Christine here, your host. And this past week, I celebrated a birthday. And in the spirit of joyful movement, I bought myself a pair of rose gold roller skates and took the afternoon and roller skated. We have a very large studio here, PopFit Studio, and I created my own little roller skating rink and spent a lovely afternoon feeling like a kid again. So what new ways are you experiencing joyful movement? Feeling like a kid again, feeling happy and joyful in your movement? Let me know on social media, on our Instagram or in our Facebook group, or you can even go to our website and leave me a message. If you want to post it on your social media pages, maybe you did something new and interesting, share it and tag us, Breaking Body Biases, and I would love to see what you're doing. On this week's episode, I learned something new. So I did something new this week. Actually, it was something old. I used to roller skate as a teenager, but I brought that back for my birthday. And I also learned something new on this week's podcast. And I learned about Enneagrams. Enneagrams, I think is how it's pronounced. I had the pleasure of speaking with professional speaker and certified Enneagram expert Jenn Whitmer. And I'm curious if you've ever heard of Enneagrams. They're a system of personality typing that describes patterns in how people interpret the world, how they manage their emotions. And Enneagrams describe 9 personality types, and it maps each of these types on a 9-pointed diagram, which helps to illustrate how the types relate to one another. And it was really, really interesting. And I personally had a few aha moments as I was speaking with Jenn, and I can't wait for you to listen. Jenn Whitmer helps teams and leaders solve conflict and personality clashes. She speaks, writes, and coaches about hard topics with a lot of joy. Through working with Jenn, people improve communication, work through conflict, and build self-awareness with the Enneagrams. She asks big questions that lead to big dreams and big ideas and really big living. Usually that means a lot of laughing, which you are going to get to experience a few times in this episode. I feel like it was my own personal coaching session in some ways. She specializes in interpersonal conflict resolution, leadership, and again, with the Enneagram, she helps people communicate through difficulty so they can have power. She's a graduate of, she has her graduate degrees or certifications in music education, theology, and leadership, along with a master's of arts in communication and culture from Webster University, and a certification, as I mentioned, in Enneagram. So she is a coach for Enneagram. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri with her husband, Michael, and their 4 kids and a cat. And I just can't wait for you to learn more about Enneagrams. So let's get into this week's episode. Welcome to the show, Jenn Whitmer. I'm so excited to talk with you today and learn more about Enneagrams. Did I say that correctly?
Well done. You did. Yes. Thanks for having me.
So this is obviously something that I know nothing about, and some listeners may know a little bit about this or a lot, but I'd love to know first what exactly is an Enneagram for those of us that are unaware of this thing. And then we can get into how it affects us maybe in our workouts and our personal life and our day-to-day life.
Absolutely. So if you're saying any of what, don't worry. Like, you're not alone. We've got you. I will take care of you. Know that a podcast is like a little bit of an appetizer. You're not getting a PhD in the Enneagram by the end of this. So just know that this
Good
is
to
your
know. Good to
appetizer
know.
into what the Enneagram is. So the Enneagram is a personality framework. It helps us really understand how we see the world, what motivates us, in all of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And it's like other personality tools in the sense that it's part of our personality, and your personality is a part of who you are, but it's not your identity. And other personality tools are great at showing you how and what you do. So I'm a communicator, I'm a strategist. Those are some of my strengths. And Myers-Briggs, I'm an intuitive and I am an extrovert. And those are part of my preferences and patterns. But those stop there. It's not like, oh, well, now what? Now what do I do? And the Enneagram is underneath all of those. It's showing what is deeply motivating me to have that preference, to have developed that strength. What am I deeply afraid of, and what do I deeply desire? And that's the motivation part of the Enneagram that sets it apart from other personality tools, but also really helps us do something with it. Because if we can start to understand why I'm doing this behavior, what's motivating it, then I can make a different choice. Because if I just change the what without addressing the why, it comes out sideways in other ways and is usually unhelpful. And I just come back to, oh, why do I keep doing this? And that's the power of the Enneagram. It's, oh, this is why I do that. Now I can make some different choices that are more healthy for me and for others.
That is very, very succinct. And I really enjoyed you sharing various things in there, like the personality tool, the preferences, and patterns that we have. And I think for our listeners that some have in the past have experienced some disordered behaviors. So whether it be with eating or with our exercise, with just how we feel about our own bodies, I'm so curious to know now what these numbers, I know there's numbers involved, what this personality tool is going to reveal, what they're going to reveal about ourselves, because I'm so curious. Having some of the other personality tools that you mentioned, I have used. I'm an introvert, and there's definitely things when I understood, oh, that's why, it really helped me to just be happier. So why don't we get into what these are and really understand what motivates us all?
Yeah.
So why don't you share some of these numbers with us?
Absolutely. So I just want to preface this before we go into the numbers, two really big ideas. One is that the Enneagram is trying to help you be healthy in your personality. So when we're talking about we've had some things that are disordered in the past, that's when we're living not as healthy as we can. And so the Enneagram is always trying to move us toward being healthy in our number, not trying to change who you are, but what's the best version of you where things are ordered rather than disordered, things are healthy rather than unhealthy. And so when I'm giving these descriptions, they can sound kind of negative, but it's because they're just in this place when we're an average. Like, that's kind of where we are a lot of the time. When we're healthy, we look a little bit different. And when we're unhealthy, we look different too. So these are kind of averages, if you want to think about it like that. So that's one big idea. The second big idea is that we all have all of the motivations. So there's 9 different types with 9 different motivations. All of them exist within each of us. And when I start going through the fears, you're like, oh, well, yeah, nobody wants that. Everybody wants this. But I like to think about them all on a bus. So if they're all hanging out on a bus, every one of them is there, but we have to have a driver. Otherwise, we don't go anywhere. So somebody's driving the bus, and others may live really close to the driver and get all up in his business and maybe messing with the GPS, but there's still one that's driving. And so you may recognize, oh, I feel 2, 3 of these. Probably so, but starting to dig a little bit into which one is underneath them all, which one is driving my bus. So that's just my little setup when we go through the numbers.
I love it. Who's driving the bus? Oh, I
Who's
love it.
driving your
Okay.
bus?
Yeah. All right.
So
So
I
we
like
can
to,
think about all that as we're listening to these numbers. We can start thinking about which ones are on the forefront for us.
yeah. And often that comes with a feeling of, ooh, I don't know if I like that. And so pay attention if you feel that. Usually that little poke is something to pay attention to. And like, maybe I should dig a little further into that. That's not your diagnosis, but that is definitely a common experience for people hearing the Enneagram for the first time. Because again, we're describing this average space, and we grow when we look at the parts of ourselves we don't like. And it's
Yes.
like, ooh.
So a
So
little discomfort right now will lead us to a more comfortable place.
I love that. Absolutely. It gives you the freedom to release some things and grow into your best self. And that's really what we want.
Yes.
So I like to start with the Enneagram eights. Lots of Enneagram teachers do. I know that can be confusing. People are like, what? What are you talking about? So the numbers of the types are from 1 through 9, but we start with Enneagram eights for a couple of reasons. One is some deeper reasons in the Enneagram about the body center, and not eights start the body center, but also because eights are pretty intense and they're like, give it to me now. So I like to start with them so I can love them well and give it to them now. So
Okay.
Enneagram eights are the just protective challengers of the Enneagram, and they're the ones who are always protecting, and they are really deeply afraid of being betrayed or controlled. And so to combat that, they're always looking to step out and be the first ones to protect and to challenge and to control a situation. They kind of manage the scene. And it's all in an effort to not be controlled themselves. Enneagram 8s do not need to be in charge, but they often find themselves in charge because the fear of, what if somebody worse than me is in charge? What if I'm the one that gets manipulated if somebody else is in charge? So they step out and take charge. And at their core, they are really kind, caring people, and they want to protect themselves and others. When they're really healthy, they're quite amazing at that protective idea and just getting stuff done. They're very much the ones with the most amount of energy on the Enneagram. They are pushers and movers and shakers, and they get us going. And you're like, whoo, it already happened, because an Enneagram 8 has already solved that problem. And that can be who an Enneagram 8 shows up in the world as. And it's all because of that fear of being controlled. And they don't want that. So they're always working around that.
I wonder if a lot of group fitness instructors fall into that category. I mean, I guess as we get into each of the numbers, like you said, they could fall across many of the numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
But that sounds a lot like some group fitness instructors that are taking the lead and taking charge, and whether they want to or not. I know a lot of group fitness instructors that started out just participants, and for one reason or another, they got kind of pushed into teaching the class or leading classes. And, they haven't looked back. I mean, that's how I got started.
So I love it. Well, an Enneagram 8, lots of people can take charge. Enneagram 8s, I don't know any Enneagram 8s who were never experienced being called bossy. Like, they just are naturally up there doing their thing, all because, well, I'm not going to be the one that gets manipulated. I'm not weak. I'm stepping out. And that's kind of the posture of an 8. And then we move. So if you think about it, I forgot to say this at the top, the Enneagram is like a circle. So if you imagine a clock, and the 9 is in the 12 o'clock spot. So the 8 is just, kind of at the 11 o'clock spot. And then we move from the 8s to the 9s at the top of the circle. And Enneagram 9s see all the different perspectives, and they are deeply afraid of conflict and loss of connection. So any kind of tension, conflict in and of itself is a deep, deep fear of the 9. And what they also are afraid of is being overlooked and their voice not being heard and their presence not mattering. But then if I share my opinion, somebody could disagree with that, and now we're in conflict and I could lose connection. So I'm going to keep that to myself. But now my fear of being overlooked is happening internally, and I have conflict internally. So, but if I say something, are you exhausted yet? Like this cycle is the cycle of the nine. And so that's that internal world of the tension, because eights are trying to control outwardly. Nines are also controlling outward and inward. They're just managing it in a different way. So they often withdraw and pull back and observe and merge into what other people think, what other people want, what other people even want to do. And they can often have real issues with making decisions. And so, well, if that's what you think, then that's what we should do, is often the path of least resistance where nines tend to go, so they don't create conflict. And that can show up, as you can imagine, in a myriad of different ways. And I think for your audience, thinking about prioritization is a real struggle for the nine. Well, what do I do first? What's the most important thing? I don't know, so I'm not going to do anything. And that can be the struggle for the nine.
Wow, that's interesting. As you go through these two, I just start thinking, is that me? Is that me?
You're not alone. Totally normal.
You said that you could be a few of these, but one will really take hold of you. So, okay, so I'll wait for that, because neither of these have really taken hold with me yet. But I do see myself in both of those situations a little bit. But yeah, I'm curious. And of course, you had mentioned earlier too that this is just like a little taste of it, that I'm sure that there'll be ways that we can find out later in the show how we can learn more and dig deeper, because this is only a half-hour episode. So
yeah.
All right, why don't we go to so if we're at 9, does it go back to the beginning or do you go back? Oh, back to
yes.
one.
Okay. Well done. Yes. So we're going to move to Enneagram ones, and Enneagram ones are always looking to make things better. And so what's the right way? What's the best way? How do I make it right? And it's because they're afraid of being wrong, and not like I'm wrong and you're right, like we're in an argument, but what's the standard? What's the right thing to do? I want to be in rightness. And so they're always looking to perfect and make things better. And so they're controlling inwardly to make sure they're right. And that fear of what if I'm wrong is intensified by a really strong internal critic. Everybody's got an internal voice that we all like. I call the internal Regina George. We've all got one, but the Enneagram one's internal critic is constant, it is consistent, and it is berating, and it's critical and telling them, and you did, this is what you should have done right. You should have done this. You should have done that. Why do you always miss? Like, it's just a constant critical, abusive voice. And that propels them to always want to make things perfect, because they're arguing with this internal voice. So if I can just control it, then this voice will stop berating me. And that's the internal struggle for the one. So they're always organized and making things, like they're so brilliant at bringing order to chaos. And when they're healthy, it's just a beautiful thing. They make us better. And still they struggle with this internal world of this critical internal control that they're trying to make happen.
Very interesting.
And, yeah.
And I wonder if you mix diet culture in with that, the pressure of perfection from society telling us that we need to look a certain way, or the workout needs to do this, or like things have to be a certain way. Yeah. That I wonder if you lean towards this, that can be even more of a struggle, because of what is perceived as perfect is really unattainable.
Completely unattainable. And as we've talked about, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about in diet culture, the visual of it isn't even real. We don't see what real bodies look like anymore. And I think it's even worse because we're kind of disembodied. I always joke on a Zoom call, I have tabletop dressing. And so you don't see what my stomach look like. You don't see what my knees look like. You don't see my full body. And so if you are always trying to reach the unattainable, that is even intensified by photoshopping and the rest of diet culture, or the right pose that makes your rear end, like all of those things that involve the diet culture, it can be so hard, because they're always asking the question, well, what is right? And if it's like, should I do this type of eating or this type of eating, or this, like, what's healthy at every size? And is that okay? What if I'm not healthy? That can be really confusing for the one. So they move toward control. And so, like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to buckle down because I have decided this is right. And my justice and respect are all dependent upon being right. And that's the struggle for Enneagram ones.
Wow. Okay. So let's move on to 2.
Yeah. Enneagram twos are these amazing helpers in the Enneagram, and they're motivated to help when they're at their best because they know this is what is kind and good for others. When they're not at their best, it's because if I don't help you, you will reject me. So this fear comes out of if I'm not supporting you, if I'm not helping you, if I'm not doing things for you and meeting all of your needs as if I don't have any, then I'm going to be rejected and I completely lose my sense of worth. And that is this internal struggle for Enneagram twos. And so they struggle with this idea of if I don't help you, then I don't have value. And lots of people are helpers. I mean, we all want to help other people, but the idea of I have to not have any of my own needs or emotions and just care for your needs and emotions is unhealthy for everybody. And that's the real struggle for Enneagram twos. And so while they are amazing helpers, they're can get so far down the helping track that they forget who they are and can put off anything that is good and healthy and right for themselves. And so that's
Yeah.
the internal struggle for twos.
I hear a lot of moms that struggle in this area. And I
Yeah.
just always assumed it was like, oh, it's just moms that are just taking care of their kids and they're not taking care of themselves. But more likely, it's probably this personality combined with being a mom that your society is telling you to take care of your kids and you take no self-care
Yeah.
and you put yourself on the back burner, whether it be just in so many ways. Self-care can be
Yes.
so much. And then we're so unhealthy because we've lost
Yeah.
ourselves and our joy. And
Mm-hmm.
wow.
All of that. And it's so intensified by like you said, culture, this idea that a mom is supposed to sacrifice everything for her kids. Well, I'm not Jesus. I'm not, I don't literally actually do that for you. And so I have needs, and Enneagram twos really struggle to get there. And that is like, it's a compulsion to care for people. And that particular mom culture is intensified in an Enneagram 2 personality. Lots of moms struggle with that mom guilt. I mean, I don't know a mom who doesn't struggle with mom guilt, but it can be in an unhealthy place. Enneagram 2s can really struggle with, am I even worth it if I'm not helping other people? And that's the tricky part for twos. And lots of people grow up thinking they're twos because if they're a woman, if you've grown up in the South, if you've grown up in a religious home of some kind, all of that enculturation says that you're a 2. But if you're actually a 2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not aspirational. It is, oh yeah, I know that that's what I do. And that's a little bit of a disclaimer for Enneagram 2s. So when
Yes.
we do that, it's always important to say. And then we move to Enneagram 3s. So Enneagram 3s are like the walking motivational posters of the Enneagram. And they are the ones who are the go-getters, and they are achieving success, and they're setting the goal and smashing the goal, and the boss babe who's out there doing all this stuff. And it's because deep down, this lie of if I don't achieve, I don't have value and significance. My identity is wrapped up into achieving the goal, which is unsustainable identity. And because that goal is done, now where does my identity come from? I have to have a new goal. I have to meet that goal. And it's hustling for your worth, which is a horrible place to sit in. And when they're healthy, they motivate us in this amazing way of being able to, teach us how to set a goal. I mean, nobody can set a goal like an Enneagram 3 and then show us the steps to get there. They're really amazing at it. And I joke, like during the pandemic at Enneagram 3, like I just started an Instagram account and a business and I got like 10,000 followers and I don't know. And like they just do it. And it's because they don't even realize how they shift to encourage people to like them, because that is part of success. So they have different personas that appear successful because success is defined externally outside of them. That's the struggle that they have. What is my worth according to me is not a question that they enjoy asking, because it's always tied to an external accolade or an external value of success.
Interesting. And I remember you saying earlier that with these, there can be some discomfort. And I'm wondering, because there's so many of these examples that you gave that they're really good. Like this is a really positive trait in a person to be like this. But then the downside is,
Mhm.
well, you're not going to be, you're not going to be happy if you fall too far in one direction where, like you said, if you're a 3 and your identity is wrapped up into how other people see you,
Yeah,
you're not connecting to like how you see yourself and what's going to make you happy. And I think that's a
exactly.
lot of dieters or
Oh,
yeah, the diet cycles, the weight cycling, all that.
totally.
They could be looked upon as, yeah, you're really great at setting the goal and achieving it. But because dieting causes weight cycling and we come around and around, we go with this weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off. It's can be a really bad struggle. And we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
we're not happy at whatever our set point is for those that
Hmm.
understand like health at every size because we're looking externally. So
Yeah.
very interesting.
Because if, say, the horrid word that we'd love to remove from all medical doctrine and curriculum, BMI, if you think that that's what you're supposed to be and you can't attain that because that's what success looks like, I mean, you're constantly, again, hustling for your worth. How
Yeah.
can I be healthy? And that comes out in all kinds of ways in your life. So each of these, I know we're talking about examples for your physical health and some of your mental health, but it's in your relationships and it's in the way you approach your career, in the way you parent, in the way you talk with your family, with your neighbors. It comes out in all these different ways. And so for 3s, hustling for your worth happens in every conversation you have, unless you're aware of it. And like, oh, my identity doesn't have to be wrapped up into what this person sees in me. And am I successful?
It's interesting because I definitely see myself as a 3 when I was in diet culture, when I was obsessed with fitting into an industry that I didn't
Mm.
have the body for. So it's interesting because I think my awareness of that aspect that I am not going to conform anymore, but I do find parts of 3 still in aspects of my life, maybe not in the
Yeah.
diet culture stuff. But when you mentioned being a mom, because I have a mom of a toddler and we just tried potty training this past weekend and
Oh, all
it
the
was an
blessings upon you.
epic failure, epic failure. And I just felt so lost in that I don't know if I was really doing it for myself or our family. I
Mm.
was doing it because preschool, you have to have it for preschool. So like all these external things and other kids are doing it. And oh, is my
Mhm.
son not going to be potty? He's going to be the oldest one, not potty trained. And so yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay, this is my therapy session. I'm going to
That's
move on
okay.
now.
That's fine.
Let's move
So
on to
one quick,
number.
I'm going to add because I can't help it because I'm a coach. One quick little addition is that for the Enneagram 3, whatever culture that you are in is the one that you want to conform to, the one you want to be to. So if diet culture is a thing, also health at any size is a thing. It's a culture. Now it's a more positive, healthy culture and we like it. But there's also an element of the Enneagram 3 is like, now I'm going to be here. And what does success look like here? That
Wow,
can
you
be the
are
hustle of the
blowing my
3.
mind right now. You are blowing my mind because I can still see it. I see exactly what you're saying with that. Wow. All right,
All right.
I'm gonna need some deep therapy after this.
Okay.
Okay.
So then we move to the Enneagram 4s. And Enneagram 4s are these beautiful creators in the world. And they create art and words and music and beauty and space for people. And it's because their deep fear is that they might be emotionally isolated and inauthentic to themselves. So they want to create space for other people to connect with them and for other people to also be authentic to their true selves. Because what if I can't be unique and special, then I don't have my worth and value. And this idea that goodness, everybody else gets to have this thing and I'm missing it. I'm missing the thing that's going to make me happy. This idea of a tragic flaw or being on the outside all the time can be the lie that comes up for that Enneagram 4. And when they are healthy, like I said, they're amazing. I swear an Enneagram 4 was the first person to coin the term. We're going to hold space for this because they're so good at it. They create space, they make that happen. And when they're healthy, they're so great at pointing us to beauty and the uniqueness of each of us in the world when they're not trying to overcome their own issues with shame by I'm unique. See, I am so unique. I'm special. And because they deeply want to be seen and they want to be seen for who they are. They often are on the outside, and that's what makes them great artists because they're observing and then they're reporting out about their perspective on that. And so again, when someone's healthy in that, it's quite amazing. But knowing that they are seen and they are unique is the deep longing of the Enneagram 4.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it's so interesting to see the contrast, like from
Mm-hmm.
being the healthy version of it and what could be the downfall. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next.
Enneagram 5s are the thinkers and the observers and the strategists of the Enneagram, and they are wanting deeply to be competent and capable. And they get there by thinking, by having the data, by having the knowledge, by deep diving into all of the research and all of the studies. And, what is the end of this knowledge that they will never come to the end to, like it's never going to end. And so the idea for Enneagram 5s is recognizing that they are capable and competent, even if they don't have 100% of the information, because it's impossible to have 100% of the information. And so their safety is dependent upon being competent and knowing, and they want to know for other people as well. So when we're talking about Enneagram 9s having this cycle that creates a super low energy, because it's exhausting to live in this cycle of if I say something, I'm going to be in conflict, but now I'm in conflict with myself. So they have the least amount of energy. Enneagram 5s have this measured amount of energy. And so they wake up every day with like 60, 70% battery. And if I don't know enough, when someone comes to ask me for something, I then have to manage my energy resources to know if I can engage with that person or engage with that idea or whatever they're asking of me. And what if I don't have enough to give them? And so this idea of what if I don't have enough, I won't be safe if I don't hold on to what I have, can be a struggle for Enneagram 5s. Enneagram 5s also really struggle with disconnecting from their bodies. They can be so much in their head. They can not eat for days, or, oh my gosh, I haven't gone to the bathroom all day, like really basic things, because they can be so in their head and forget to take care of their own physical needs in very real, tangible, basic ways.
I wonder if sometimes people that are you said fives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or fives,
Yeah.
um, that struggle in this area with being so in their heads that they may not go to, say, a gym or a fitness studio or work out in groups.
Yeah.
Because of just like being in their head and holding back that energy, and where maybe that group setting may uplift them, because we have a group fitness studio here. So we build community and we support each other. But I'm wondering if that's helpful to them if they would come, but they don't come because of that holding on and that being in their head.
And what can be really challenging for a 5 is when I get there, what if I don't know what to do? And so that, again, back to knowing and back to thinking. And so, from a studio aspect, here's what to expect is a great comfort for a 5. Like, here are the dance steps we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do them. Not that you need to write, a dissertation for every workout class, but that's really comforting to a 5. A lot of 5s start off working out at home like that because people require energy. Am I going to have to talk to people after class? I don't quite know. All of that is happening through the mind of a 5. And what 5s discover is that when they do build real relationships and community, they are more secure. They are happier. They understand they don't have to know, and that people can give to them as well. It just takes a while to get there. And so that's kind of the struggle for the 5.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that maybe as group fitness instructors, if you're listening, like learning more about that and to say, like you said, simply in the beginning of class, saying, like, this is what you can expect today, or this is what you could
Mhm.
expect from. So your kind of mind is put at ease and you're not like, oh, what is she going to make me do in class? Or even sending something out, thinking of putting on my business owner hat, like sending something out to people prior to coming in and saying, this is what you can expect. Put their mind at ease. I mean, I know because I've been there before where I stopped working out for a while and I go back to the gym and it's that first time going back is the most intimidating. And I'm
Totally.
I'm not a 5 and it's intimidating period to everybody when you feel like, are you going to be
Absolutely.
judged or am I going to be, especially in the fitness industry, shamed for not working out during this time or
Mhm.
all the things. But I feel like Zoom, as much as I hated 2020 and having to bring my studio online, I think it gave lots of 5s and other people that
Yeah.
are are maybe could be intimidated by going to a place. It gave them the opportunity to turn their cameras off and to
Yeah.
just do what felt good.
Yeah. Absolutely. That can be really comforting for a 5 to know, and to also know that exactly what's expected of them. That's really important for a 5. And it's not totally dissimilar from a 6. So as we move to the 6, you'll hear some similarities here because 6s like to be prepared, but their preparation comes from being afraid of not what if I don't know, but what if I'm blamed? What if I'm physically or emotionally abandoned in this situation? And so I'm going to prepare all the things to make sure that that doesn't happen to me. I'm going to, what if this? Okay, boom, 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 like decision trees and all kinds of what if scenarios spinning. And that may be worst case scenario spinning. Some 6s don't love that interpretation, but it comes out in this, oh, what if they say this, I'm going to say this, or if they say this, I might say this. So it's not necessarily even worst case, it's just all the cases. And that's what 6s are doing to make sure that they don't get blamed, because what they're wanting is safety and security. And so my safety and my security and dealing with my angst, I do that by preparing. And so 6s ask a lot of questions. They bring us so much context. Okay, here are all the things that you need to know, because they've already thought about all those things, which is amazing. But when they aren't healthy, it can come across and for themselves actually be really full of anxiety in a way that can be crippling, and experiencing that anxiety in a way that makes them feel like they don't make good decisions, makes them feel like I have to be brave every day, and that type of life. And when we were talking about 1s having this one internal critic, Enneagram 6s often have an internal committee. Well, if you do this, you should do this. If you do this, and if you've ever made decisions by committee, friends, I mean,
Yeah,
so
that
that
does not work. Yeah.
does not work. And so that can be the internal word of the 6. And when they're, again, when they're healthy and they're like, I make good decisions, I'm going to make this choice, and trust that and step out in that bravery, they're really great for all of us. They're loyal, they bring context, they do prepare us for things in ways that are so generous, but they also like to know what to expect and they like to be prepared.
I was just thinking about that when you said that about the committee and that analysis paralysis that you get in, that you're
Exactly.
just frozen and not taking any action.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
we have one more, correct?
The
One more we're
7s.
circling around.
Uh-huh. Well done keeping track of your clock there. Yes, Enneagram 7s are always looking for the planning of what's next. So 6s are preparing like, oh, what if this? And 7s are like, oh, what if we could? And it's a totally different perspective of the same question. And so they're brainstorming and planning, and they're looking for what's this thing that's going to fill me up and be exciting. And it's because what they're afraid of is missing it. What if I have to experience pain and I'm trapped there and I'm not going to get to the thing that makes me happy? What if I am limited? Or I swear an Enneagram 7 was the person who first coined the term FOMO, because that is the deep fear of the 7. What if I miss out? What if this thing is the thing that was going to make me happy? And so they're on this quest of being filled up with experiences, with food, with people, with just getting filled up with ideas and things that will stimulate them so they don't have to deal with, what if I am experiencing pain? I'm just going to ignore that pain by filling up on what's fun and exciting and enjoyable to me.
I do feel a connection to that. It reminded me of what you mentioned earlier about like the situations that you're in. It's with like when I was in diet culture, I was trying to conform. And when I'm outside of it, now I'm trying to conform to that. And I wonder if it's very similar with the ages that you are in your life with FOMO. So when I was younger, I definitely had a lot of FOMO. I was constantly doing things. Now I have so much FOMO about not getting enough sleep because I'm a mom and I very busy. So is that a thing, or is that a stretch? Is that too much of a stretch?
It's not totally a stretch, but I do love that you have FOMO about sleep. Like other people are sleeping and I don't get to. It's true. I love naps because I'm getting to sleep and other people aren't.
Yeah.
I don't know. But and so when you're thinking about the connections between your ages, we do think as Enneagram teachers, most teachers teach that you're the same number your whole life, but it shows up differently. The motivations are the same. So I'm wanting to appear successful wherever I am, going back to the 3, or I'm going to not experience pain wherever I am. And that shows up differently in different stages of your life, but that motivation doesn't actually change. And as we grow and mature, we get better at coping with that, ideally. And I mean, that's the big work that I do with people in the Enneagram, but just as our natural people, we try to grow throughout our life. So it looks a little different, but that motivation of, I got to take care of myself, I got to find that thing that's going to make me happy, is always the quest of the 7. And to your point, 3s, 7s, and 8s are a lot alike, and there's a lot of mistyping that happens within there. So there's a lot of exploration that happens in those 3 numbers in particular. There are other numbers that experience that as well, but just talking about you, like the 3 and the 7, there's a lot of connections there. And even as I was on my own Enneagram journey, it took me about 7-8 months to really decide. And it was definitely between 7 and 8, and then between 7 and 3, like, ooh, which one am I, before I really landed on my number.
Yeah, because there's so much to unpack here. So I know there's probably listeners like, oh, I'm because I have 3 numbers in my head right now.
Totally.
And but at this point, I very much appreciate that you said that it took you time to really unpack and sit with and learn. And so no one should be finishing this podcast episode and be like, oh, I'm this, unless you've been doing this for a little while. Some people
do. Okay. But some people are like, oh my gosh, that's totally me.
But don't be stressed if you don't quite know yet, because they can do more work in this area. This is like the first bite, and now you can learn a little bit more, because you not only help people unpack all this, but then what do you do with it? Because that's the most important thing, not just knowing what you are. So share with listeners, and we'll put all of this information, all of your contact information in the show notes, and how to follow you on social media. But what do you do with people once first they have to figure out what they are? Yeah. And then what?
Yeah. So we start that journey, by figuring out what is your Enneagram number and what is motivating you, and where do you see those motivations showing up in your office cubicle or your home office desk, depending on where you are now, and, with your family, with your spouse. How do you see these motivations showing up for you? And when is it causing you a problem? And how do we work through those problems? And so the Enneagram is one tool of our life. If we only ever talked about the Enneagram and we never talked about, so the other thing I talk a lot about is conflict resolution, and I never talked about how to actually resolve the conflict, it's not going to get you very far. So I'm always looking to apply the Enneagram in every circumstance. So I look at leadership styles, your relationship styles, your communication style, your conflict style, your decision-making style. How does it show up? And what's really great about that you want to lean into? And what's unhelpful for you? And what can you allow to do the inner work to let it fall away? The things that are not helpful for you. And I do that with group coaching and one-on-one coaching, but I also work with teams, and I do a lot of keynote speaking and workshops with teams and helping them function better together as a group, because the next step behind figuring out yourself is really a team of people and a community of people starting to use the Enneagram to make their work more effective their conversations more whole, the people in general more connected.
Amazing. And I love all this. I'm going to dive deeper now and learn more. And again, I'll put all of your information in the show notes so people can connect with you and learn more. Just learn more. There's
Absolutely.
so much
So if
to
you're
unpack.
listening to this, here's my little challenge for you. Come find me on Instagram. Instagram or LinkedIn are where I play the most. Come find me and send me a DM and you're like, okay, so here's the big takeaway that I got from that podcast. You can leave it in a comment somewhere too, but I would love a DM and let me know, like, here's what I thought. Here's my questions. Come find me. So, and you can find everything. And I have a free resource called Why Do I Keep Doing This? And it's at jennwhitmer.com/freebies. And it goes through the motivations in a little bit more bullet pointed way than we talked about on the podcast today. You can really start to dig in and say, oh, here are the motivations of each type. And that's available for free. And you can start digging in.
Great. And we'll put the links in the show notes. If you head on over to breakingbodybiases.com, you'll be able to quickly get over to Jenn's Instagram and to our website to download the freebie. So we like to end every episode with a couple quick fire questions. So we love to know.
I'm holding on to my chair. Here we go.
So, this past year, everybody's been binge watching things. So we didn't know if you have something binge worthy that you'd like to share with our audience on television or maybe a movie or podcast, whatever you want to share.
Okay. I'm going to share two. One is Ted Lasso, because I love Ted Lasso. And someday when I get my doctorate, I'm going to write a dissertation on the leadership lessons of Ted Lasso. So good.
I love it. I want to read it. I 100%. I love it. I love Ted Lasso too.
I love Ted Lasso. So if you haven't watched Ted Lasso, it's on Apple TV. It is totally worth the $5 to binge watch it all. And I also studied in college in Oxford. So I was the American in England. And so it's so fun to see that. And I grew up in Kansas City. Ted Lasso is from Kansas City. So I have all these connections,
wow.
And I played soccer. My kids play soccer. And anyway, so it's a great show. It's so funny. It is full of leadership life lessons. There's a lot of the F-bombs, so you might not want to watch it with your kids, but it's so good. So good. So that's my first one. And my second one is Brene Brown's podcast, Dare to Lead. I love that show. It has so much to offer. And this summer she did a series with her sisters, and it's 6 episodes about wholehearted living. And I just think it's a lot of the things that I teach. She has influenced my teaching as well. And I just think it's a wealth of information about living life in these full areas. And they do talk a little bit about their own Enneagram numbers, which is kind of fun. So that podcast is great.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put both of those in the show notes because I can attest that Ted Lasso is absolutely amazing. I put the little one to bed and then we watch it. So it's a great show. And the connections are amazing. I mean, that's
so good.
That's a lot. So what is your favorite way to move your body?
Well, first of all, I love to swim. I don't get to swim all the time, but that is my favorite. I was a swimmer. I love the water. So I don't get to do that as much. So I try to take a walk outside every day, just even if it's around my house. But I really love walking and seeing what's outside and being outside. And I think it opens up so much in my heart and in my body and in my mind. And I often will walk with a podcast, and I often will walk without anything and just seeing and focusing on my body and just moving and being grateful for the fact that I can move my body. And I had a knee injury a couple of years ago that was really rough. And so I think moving my body by walking and swimming are my favorites.
Yeah. Walking is so great because you don't need anything. You just go. And I love that you sometimes listen to something, but then sometimes just go out and be with your own thoughts and explore.
I also like to bust a move. I'm a terrible dancer, but I do like to dance.
Oh, good. We definitely love dancing here. So finally, what is a favorite song or an artist or a genre of music that you're listening to now?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I was a music teacher for the first 10 years of my career. So I have super eclectic versions of music. I say right now, my theme song is from The Greatest Showman. This Is Me. Yes. I love that song. And she's like, you can shoot me all the arrows you want, but I'm not going to let the shame sink in. So good. So love that song. That's what I'm going to pick.
That song is so powerful. And that movie was just on TV or something the other day. And that scene where she's walking out from that at the opera house. Oh, so powerful. and just chills when you listen
So
to that
there's a
song.
great YouTube link as well if you want to put it in the show notes that I cry
Sure.
every time of watching her do it. So I'll send it to you. But so good of her in singing it for the first time when they were trying to get funding for the musical. And it is like I cry every time. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, that's amazing. We'll definitely put that up. That is something to definitely check out. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise in this area. I can't wait for listeners to learn more and to just be more aware and take the next steps and just being healthier and happier. So
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Thanks for having me.
So, what is your Enneagram number? Did something resonate with you in this episode? Maybe you'll want to dive a little bit deeper. I found myself teetering between a few. Let us know on a social media. You can also leave us a message on our website. And to dive a little bit deeper, check out our show notes for links to how to connect with Jenn today. As always, if you can take a moment and rate and review the show, we really appreciate it. It helps more viewers find out about our show. And again, our goal of reaching more people and helping to destroy diet culture. We can't wait to see you next week for another new episode.